I had to look up some of this, so I may as well cover it with you. You'll be needing to specify, at least with this series of windows, you'll be needing to specify which kind of these glazing you want. And I kind of looked at things, and this is, you can read this if you like yourself, but you will have to choose presumably one of these, I don't know, 5 or 10 options, 9 options apparently. I don't know what their most common is. I imagine that the retailer, Reckworth in particular, you should be able to see these at Reckworth, as well as probably be better advised on this bit here. But I did want to mention, in terms of privacy on that west wall, not that you want to add glazing, more big glazing to that, but they do have that sort of privacy thing. And for that door, the new door, the 3-light door between the 2 rooms where the one is getting moved, I'm showing that with something like this. Your existing interior door there, that pantry door, it has actually a little bit of a profile on its edge. It doesn't have this flat edge. And so if you want that, you would have to go to a regular interior door. They do, they have these 2 different panels where this bottom rail, I believe your interior door, your pantry door, has a high bottom rail. It's probably 8 or 9 inches. And the one that we're moving to the outside is one of these contemporary panels. So there will be a question of whether you want to order that. And maybe we already talked about this, but you haven't indicated for sure, at least I haven't heard it or remember it. But yeah, you have to specify whether you want that traditional panel on the bottom and then it divided into 3 ways, like your interior pantry door, or whether you want it like this and then divided 3 ways, like your sliding door bottom rail. I've made several updates to this and ran into a couple issues that needed solved as well, so I had to go through it, so you will too. This, though, to answer your question about the ceiling height, is 16 foot. It's 16 foot 7 to the bottom of the required 2 14-inch LVLs. And because we have to use these 2x10s as rafters, we could use 2x6s, except we can't get enough insulation in there. Whether CJ wants to investigate using closed cell spray foam, he can, because if he wants to, and that can be done, you can get the required insulation in 2x6s, and you can run 2x6s here, and then you don't have to drop this beam as low to have a reveal right here. Right now I have the beam dropped some in order to, just so that it's not slammed up against here with the only a couple inches joist. You can play with that as you want, but I did want to mention that you might want to use this as a chase for those line sets if this room is going to require, particularly if this room is going to require 2 interior units, or at once one on one of these walls because of all the glass. This can be used as a place to travel that line set through to one of these walls or the other. But if you were to push that all the way up against there, and it would only be your drywall, and then, oh, I have it, that's right, I have this beam finish down low enough that this wall trim that I put together dies into the side of that. And so I have that as high as it can and have that arrangement there, which means the bottom of that is going to be 3.5 inches below the bottom of the beam. So you will net a 16 foot 3.5 room. A little detail here, this cabinet, this space is 24 inches from the face of this brick to the face of this brick. I don't think you can bring this out of a 24-inch deep cabinet. I don't think you can put that in there and have it come right out to the surface of this brick and look good. So what I'm showing is a 21-inch deep vanity base. Well, hopefully it's as high as a kitchen base, but I'm showing it 21 inches deep and just pushed back about an inch. Probably, I imagine, maybe these shelves want to all stop flush with the brick. All of these shelves up here, because as it is with this push back an inch and those in front of the brick an inch, that means there's a 2-inch overhang, so that's going to be definitely wrong. I'm not going to adjust that. That should go back. And down here, yeah, that was what I did down here, is just continued that base across like the living room. We are going to return to this little detail here because this is what I ran into. But first of all, we'll look at some of these interiors, and this changes a little bit here, but it won't make sense until it's explained. These were a couple of these variations on the interior, and it's going to show more than you need because of what I was working with here, trying to see what was happening. So going through these, this is the one with these 3 mirrored over here on the west side, and the 3 transoms continuing to the wall. This is with those 3 transoms gone. They're back again, and this is just because I was working with this here. And so that was them with and without. And I'm not sure where they'll put these interior mini split handlers, but if they put them between the window and that trim at the top of the room, there's about 9 3/4 of an inch there to work with. And I'm not sure which. I guess you would have to center them on one of these windows to, if they're located on one of these west or east walls. I don't know. Maybe if it's located between the door and the group of 3 windows on that wall, and if the 3 transoms aren't on the west wall, it can be kind of freely located along there. But otherwise, maybe it's just up on the one of both gables or something. I was just thinking about, that's all. And then from the outside, this is all that mattered, this view here as far as this goes. I'm assuming that I got all of this correct here. These are 12-inch columns between the windows here, and these are 8 as they are over there as well. And are these little ones here, these 2 or 3 little ones that go up here. This is with all those windows shown though, those extra 3 transoms, and this is without them. Now this brings us to, but looking, this is the issue I ran into, is this outswinging hinged patio door. Anderson doesn't provide any details, and I didn't expect that they would, for this to be mounted with our environment, okay, which is this brick exterior. And I copy this same diagram over here and get everything shaped up right. This is what it looks like, and I'm going to try to go through this in a hurry because I don't want to bore you, but this is probably critical for whoever's building this. They're going to have to know this, and this is the only way I could figure out how to put this together. I have not telephoned Anderson, however, to see if they do provide any sort of detail, but I will do that. However, I don't expect that that will be fruitful. But to continue, so that I can keep this moving, this is the Anderson door mounted as an outswinging door, and these are the mounting screws they want you to use. These are 3-inch mounting screws. Well, you can't mount that into the brick. You could try, I suppose you could try, but it's not something, I don't think that they're going to stand behind it, and I don't think it's going to stand up. That is up to the two of the contractor and the owner as far as that goes. But if I was building this, I knew I would have to figure out something, so I did what I could with it as far as that goes. And what that entails, that's the interior framing. Presumably that's these 2 here almost surely exist. Those 2 2x4s there, and there's the interior casing there. So you can see that the jamb extension apparently will work, and this casing can probably either even just stay here if a person's careful, and then this put in. But when we get to mounting this door in here, this is what I came up with. So returning to this mid-film, getting rid of some of this, or changing some of this stuff, and changing this to a 4x4 and sawing it down to 3 1/4 wide. So this is 3 1/2 by 3 1/4, just to give ourselves a little bit of play, because you've sawed this at 3 1/2 presumably. Here's what has to happen, is that this gets sawed at 3 1/2. That lintel needs held up in the interim, and this is a 4x4, or whatever that is. It has to be, hopefully it's back aligned with that and still within 3 1/2 inches here, and then some 3/8 Simpson screws or run into that existing framing. So I think, and I don't think it helps us to fasten it to this masonry at all. I wouldn't even bother, because I just don't think. But I think if I was choosing this, which way to go, I would use the 4x4 and then have a 2x4 back here, and I would just nail this 2x4. This is a 4x3 1/4, and I would nail this 2x4 firmly to that framing with 16 or 20 nails, and then these 3/8 by 7 Simpson screws going in through there and holding that up, and that on both sides, and that 4x4 then holds up what the brick used to, holds up the lintel for all the rest of that brick as well. And actually, having thought about it, I don't think that this running some additional Simpson, and they would have to embed in here 3 inches, so maybe some additional 6-inch screws from Simpson, 3/8 also, going into those mortar joints that way, vertically, maybe 3 of those, and maybe a net of 6 of these. So maybe altogether 10 of those on each of these 4x4s will do the trick. But it definitely needed to be considered, and I think this is probably reliable. The only further thing I might add to it, as just a fail-safe from wanting this wall wanting to wag back and forth, is maybe one of these Simpson ABA 44s, and I think that those are skinny enough in one direction that you could get them under that 4x4 at the bottom and screwed into the foundation, or anchored into the foundation, and then you won't be able to run anchor or any kind of screws in from the back, because it'll be facing back here in the blind, but you can get them out here, and that will probably be enough, particularly if you figure a way to run that 2x4 on down past that. But that's just one more thing I wanted to add to that. If I was building it for the $5 part, I would try that, and then the rest of this, and I would be pretty confident at that point. Now we'll return to this part that is partially moot, and I'll pick it back up where it becomes relevant again. All of this being made moot by what has just come before. On each of these, there's going to be 3 vertical, 3 or 4 vertical, 3 or 4 vertical, 3 or 4 vertical, all the way down, which seems excessive, but I'm not sure how else this can be reliably done, except that bit I just showed you, and so you see how this goes. And now we return to the part of this that is relevant. And then, so this is their door installed, and you have options to use this exterior casing that they supplied, but it's either a flat casing of 3 or 4 inches, or it's a brick mold type casing, neither of which I don't think is going to work for us. But this is the flat casing, so we can get any of these kind of things with this flat casing stylized outside to hide our all this stuff that we have to do here, that I don't see a way around doing here. I'm not even 100% sure that this is a terrific idea, but I think it would work. I would do it if I were doing it. Second idea is still better, and that's what I would do now. All they rely upon when they put this in is they rely on this flange, presumably, and they rely on these screws, these number 10 by 3 inch screws that go through the jamb behind these doors. And the new door, this 3-light door, is 71 1/4. I measured our masonry opening as 71 1/8, and the new door is 71 1/4, so there's already an issue. But the way I've done this is cut this back 3.5 inches. And I had shifted those 2x4s toward the door, but that's probably not going to be possible. The door will be slammed against those 2x4s, presumably, which will be just as well. Like this, and then the only other thing I did on that Actually, you could probably get away with making those 2x4s a little skinnier if you shift them screws around creatively. And then if you didn't want to use the casing from Anderson, I'm really sorry to drag this out, but I had to go through it. So if you didn't want to use this casing from Anderson because it was all just square stock, there was no colonial type thing like yours, then I started like this and had your colonial out there in front of that casing, in front of the, this is the colonial casing, and I have it out in front of your unit. But as you see, that will not work. And then I backed it up with a piece of finished lumber like poplar that's painted like this and sanded here at the edge, and it just looks thick there. But when I started putting this together, you would run that same thick piece underneath the bottom of this door at the bottom, the same depth, and there is the door, and that's the hinge pin there. And when you rotate this around that hinge pin, this is open 170 and it's hitting the casing, and it's only open 170 degrees and it's hitting the casing. So that's not going to work. I figured that was not going to work. If we want to get it to go, you know, almost as far as a person would without the knob hitting, it begins to squeeze that casing or crunch that casing. So that I moved the casing back like this, where I just have a piece of blocking here as thick as the baseboard. Soon found out that was not going to work. However, we come in here and we just start looking at some of the stuff I did to figure this out. That scrap in there is your old brick sill, so that's got to go. And then I modeled this door a little bit more exactly using their drawings, and that's how that is. And I tried to pull that back a little, and this is finishing up the door modeling. I'm pulling that back forward a little bit because I knew it was going to have to. And then these casings are pulled out. Now the casings are still nailed against the wall, against those, hiding those 2x4s now. So they are back, and the door is coming forward of them, and that's just how the doors are built and how things have to be installed. And so your option is to pull that casing forward and build that out behind the casing with a piece of poplar, and that is actually going to be, according to my dimensions, that's going to be pieces 0.909, so about 15/16 of an inch thick behind that casing, and then that's just sanded and painted like the casing. And that was the best I could do with both mounting that in a reliable way, and that would let it swing back against the wall like it should, and getting that colonial casing in there. Now the casing isn't out as far as it was in this diagram back here. The casing isn't out that far. It's back somewhere between there and here, like that. And you can see everything's clearing. You might need a door stop here. So I'm pretty sure that wraps this film up anyway. This is with that casing treatment there, and the sill treatment here, and the windows there. And this is with those the same in the windows here. And I couldn't bear to show any of those air conditioning units on any of these walls. So you will have to decide the best way to handle that. But anyway, that's it for now. I will be in touch shortly, I'm sure. Thank you.